Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Yes, today I am going to be editing this landscape photo that I took in the Isle of Skye last year. It's actually one of my favourite photos. The conditions were just perfect for this sunrise. You've got these lovely mountain, snow-capped mountain tops when this sun was just rising on my left-hand side. And it was just lighting up these clouds really nicely. So yeah, we're going to start off with the global adjustments, getting the image ready for all the small little adjustments that really make the image pop. So before making any global adjustments, I like to crop and straighten the image. This helps me focus on the final composition. This just helps so I'm not editing parts of the image that that I'm going to end up cropping out. It also a straight horizon. Trying to get a straight horizon is super important for landscapes. It just makes your photo look more balanced and more professional. So why global adjustments first? Well, I do global adjustments first because they set the overall look of the image. It's like adjusting the whole picture before fine-tuning the smaller details. If I start off with this local edits too soon, I might have to redo them later when I'm, so I tend to get all the bigger stuff done first and then focus on the smaller areas later on. So what I'll do is straight away, I'm going to come straight down into the lens correction. I'm going to remove any chromatic aberration and I'm going to enable the profile for the lens. As you can see, it has got rid of any distortion and vignetting that's within the image. So yes, so like I said, I'm going to start off with cropping and straightening the image. Now, I'm looking at the overall image and I'm thinking what's needed, what's not. So the most important part is the main subject, which is this mountain and this cloud formation. And on the day when the sun was rising, this cloud was completely orange. It was absolutely beautiful. So I'm just going to look at where I can crop it to. Now the image really isn't balanced, so I'm going to crop it so it's more balanced as well. So the way I do that is I'm going to use the crop tool and I'm going to look at the edge here to the edge on the right hand frame. Now I want to keep this part of the mountain in place because obviously I'm liking the way the sun's hitting the top, and I also think it helps balance the overall image. So if I was to come in ever so slightly, just keeping the same gap here, I suppose, I may just keep it the same distance, and then just bring that in just so it matches slightly, something like there. Now we've got a lot of foreground here that's not got no interest. It's a bit messy. So I do like this fence that's coming across here. It's not really going to do much to the image, but I want to try and keep that in the shot. So I'm going to reduce a lot of this negative space that's here. So I'd probably say around about, what we say about there? Let's just have a little look at that. Yeah. I mean, we're not really going to be paying attention to that because also when I get to the local adjustments, I'm probably going to be darkening this image at this part of the scene down anyway. And again, we've got we've got a lot of negative space up in the top third. So go back into your crop tool. I'm just going to crop that down. Just say it's got more of a panoramic feel to the image now. I'd say right about here because I do want to keep some there's some detail up here. There's some detail over here as well that I want to just try and keep. And I think that looks okay. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. Now straightening the horizon, obviously as you can tell, it's a mountain region here, so there's nothing we can really go by in regards to straightening this. What I do know is obviously this mountain here was slightly taller than this at the perspective that I was standing. So I don't want to be straightening and raising this mountain higher, making this more dominant than this mountain here. I don't want to do that. I want to try and keep it as natural, keeping this mountain here more dominant. It was more this peak that's hidden in the clouds here. That was more taller than this side. So there's not really much I can go with in regards to straightening this image out. What I could probably do is buy not so much these fence posts here, but I can probably go with these pylons. Now, obviously, you'd hope that whoever put these pylons on would have it as straight as possible. So I'm going to go into my rotate tool and I'm going to have a look. As you can tell, these black lines that have come up, and you see these pylons are quite slightly off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and match up the two pylons either side. So this pylon here and this pylon here. So if I was to rotate that ever so slightly, just so it kind of is straight, I think that has done it, which is nice. Now, there's a reason why I've left some of this foreground here in places, because obviously now we've rotated it, we have this white space here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slightly scale the image in ever so slightly just to remove that, while still maintaining having some of this foreground in place. So I'm just going to go in a little tiny bit more, just say something like that. Now I think that kind of works. Now the mountains are more prominent in our face as we've zoomed in. I've still maintained the balance for each side of here, while still maintaining this mountain that I want. So yeah, I think that works quite well. So that's the overall image. That's the composition I've gone for, and now it's just about doing the global adjustments and then just getting that right, just so we can get on with finalizing the image. Yeah, let's just crack on. So we have a few options we can start off with here. I mean, if I wanted to, I can come into the profile here. I can go into my landscapes, just see what that gives me. Doesn't really do much for me, so I'm going to keep it as Adobe color, keep it as it is. So the white balance. The way I look at white balance is it's setting the mood of your image. So the warmer tones enhances your sunrise, while the cooler tones can emphasize a crisp, icy feel to your image. Now this is a bit of both. So we've had obviously the warmth color of the sunrise coming through the light, and then obviously we've got snow-capped mountains. There's two ways I can go about doing this. I can set it manually and just adjust the slider to how I feel it suits the image, or I can just use this white balance selector by clicking on this, and then I'll just find a selection in the snow that I think suits the overall image. So I'm thinking maybe something like this. So what's that, 70,000 at -13? I might just cool it down a little bit. So the exposure, so I'm just gonna raise it ever so slightly, not so much, not too much, just enough to bring out some of these shadowy areas or the darker patches in the frame. The contrast, I'm not going to do anything with the contrast just yet. I'll probably leave that till last. However, I do my contrast in the tone curve. So also the whites and the blacks, when I come to them, will also help with the contrast of the image. But again, I'll play around with that at the end of the processing. So what I'm going to do is the highlights. The highlights, I normally just lower the highlights because it just brings back the sky details. So by reducing that, as you can tell, it just brings back some of the details in the sky, especially around this area here where I've got some colour in that cloud. So I'm just going to reduce that around about, let's say about here. Now my histogram's still looking quite good. I'm not clipping any highlights over here. Obviously we just reduced them, and obviously the blacks are looking quite good as well. So I'm just going to raise my shadows because I want to bring back some of the details in the darker areas around here of the mountain. Just bringing some of them back. just not too much, so it looks like this. It's just, it just looks blah, it looks bland, it looks, there's no contrast to it at all. So I'm just gonna just ever so slightly raise that. Now with my whites and my blacks, the way I do this is I'll use my Alt key, and then I'll click on the tab here, and I'll just raise my whites until you start seeing what's going on here. Obviously, that's just you clipping your highlights, your whites. So I'm just going to bring it in just so a little tiny bit, just before you start seeing the weird colors coming through. I'll just get it just about there, and I'll do the same with the blacks. I'm just going to bring down the blacks ever so much, just say to about here. Texture, clarity, and dehaze. Now, texture, I'll always add a little bit of texture to my images, especially with something like this with mountains and stuff. It just gives you just a boost of sharpness, ever so slightly. Now, you're probably not going to see this in video, but it does add. If we come up to your mountain tops here, it just adds just a tiny bit of sharpness, as you can tell, as to what it's doing there. So I only want it ever so slightly, not too much. Like that looks good to me. Clarity is actually a good one. Again, it's something you use very very minute of. So it kind of adds depth to the image. So if I was to bring this up, you can tell how much clarity, what clarity does in the overall image. It does kind of sharpen it as well, but again, I don't really play much around with this too much, so I'm just going to raise it ever so slightly. Again, nothing too much, because it will start to ruin, and it also makes everything just looks a bit too harsh. Dehaze. Let's go back to the overall image. So we do dehaze tool. You can go either way, but I find it helps with small adjustments if the clouds or mist need a bit more definition. So if I was to bring this up now, you can see how much definition it brings to the clouds. But I won't need to do much with this because I can do local adjustments on the clouds and bring out the definition that way. So I'm going to leave the dehaze as is for now. Again, something I may come back to towards the end of the final image. Vibrance and saturations. Well, so with the vibrances, I find vibrance is more forgiving and better suited for landscapes, while saturations should be used with caution, because the vibrance really enhances colours naturally. That's what I find. And then with the saturation, I'd probably use that sparingly to avoid unnatural colours. So what I tend to do is I tend to raise, not too much, obviously that's way too much, but I'll just bring that up ever so slightly. 16, and then I'm going to just drop the saturation a little tiny bit. Moving down to the tone curve. So although the overall image is looking quite, it's not really popping at the moment, but again, this is just the global adjustments. This is just getting the colors right, the black points, the white points all correct, just so when I come to the local adjustments, I can then start popping these colors out and really making an image out of this. And this is where the tone curve is going to come and play a big part, especially when it comes to your contrast. This is what I'd like to use for my contrast. So as you can see, you've got 2 points here. I'm just going to add a point just by left clicking the mouse in the center here. So think of this as your histogram. As you've got your histogram up here, on the right side is obviously your your brights and your highlights, and then obviously down here on the left is going to be your shadows and your blacks, and then you've got your mid greys here, your mid tones. So it's the same here. You've got your highlights, your mid tones, and your shadows. So raising, just by clicking on the point here, you can raise it up. It obviously increases the blacks, and you darken it by going to the right. The same way with your mid-tones. Higher it goes, the brighter it is. The lower you go, the darker it gets. The same with your highlights. Over to the left, brightens it, drops it, darkens it. Okay, so this is a lot of the time people use it like an S curve. You probably hear people talk about S curve when it comes to tone curves. It just allows you for more refined contrast adjustments just by tweaking specific tonal ranges, i.e. your shadows, your midtones and highlights. So with this particular image, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop the midtones ever so slightly. I'm not going to do, I'm just going to darken ever so slightly my blacks, and then just going to brighten up. Just get some of that pop up into the clouds here, because that they were quite bright. I mean, I am starting to clip over here in this section here, but I can readjust that at a later date. I'll just adjust that now, just so it's not. So far for the overall image, I think that's a good little start. I'm not going to mess around with anything else just yet. I think this here is a good baseline. I'm thinking it should be good to go for your local adjustments. What I will do is, obviously, we've got some blue. That's just popped a bit too much over here. And I've got to be careful over on the left-hand side here as well, because, you know, we've got some whites here. That's going to start popping soon if we're not too careful. So, again, we can sort them out in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just reduce, come down to my HSL, my color mixer. I'm just going to find the blue tab in the saturations, and I'm just going to drop the blues ever so slightly so they turn back to grey with a hint of blue in the background, because it is obviously sunrise. And yeah, I think that is looking quite nice, yes. So the first thing I'm going to do now is go into my local adjustments, and I'm going to select a mask. And the first mask I'm going to do is my linear gradient. I'm just going to put that over the clouds here, and I'm going to make these pop. So I'm just going to ever so slightly. Don't worry if it goes over, because obviously we can sort that out if it does. I'm just going to play around with the contrast with this. I'm going to reduce some of that highlights. I'll bring up some of the shadows in the mountains. I'm going to keep an eye on my histogram as well, because obviously I really don't want the highlights or the shadows to be completely gone. And let's just play around with its colors. No, I'm going to mess around with that too much. But as you can tell, with just by them small adjustments, so that's with it off. It's just enhanced the contrast a little bit, and it's just brought out a bit of detail, which I think looks quite nice. Now what I do want to do is I want to bring out some of this color up in this cloud here, because that was really glowing. That was really nice. It was popping quite nice as well. I'm just going to use a radial. I'm just going to bring that over here, and this is a good way of your using the dehaze. This is a great example of using the dehaze. So I'm going to just brighten that up a little bit on here. Just going to darken that down a bit, and we're only going to affect that. really warm that up. I'll probably just remove some of that that's on here. So that's with it out. That's with a bit too much on the saturation side of things. Just going to turn that down ever so slightly. Up a little bit. Not too much there. Yeah, I think that looks okay. That to look the way it should. A little bit concerned about this patch around here. So with that, I'm gonna just get a brush tool, just cover that area up with paint around here. I'm just gonna turn the exposure down ever so slightly, just to bring back some of that detail in it as well. Don't want too much contrast. Lower the contrast and that. Gives it back some of that detail back in that cloud that was sitting there, so it's not so obvious then, is it, that, you know, it's looking quite sharp. Now I think we're going to get another gradient, so linear gradient. I'm just going to come from here and I'm just going to raise it up ever so slightly, and I'm just going to give it some more contrast. I just want to bring up some of the details on here just to brighten it up a little bit. I don't want it too much, but I also want to cool down the area because it was for sunrise. So yeah, I don't want it too warm. Lift up some of them. Don't want them blacks to go beyond repair, if that makes sense. And I think that looks quite good. That looks quite good there. If we come down to the vignette, I'll lower that. I don't want too much of the vignette, he says. Only very minute, and I want to get rid of the ones in the highlights. Anywhere it's affecting the highlights, I'm going to reduce that. So as you can tell, if I can darken that down like so, and you see the highlights in the clouds, it kind of keeps them there. So we want to keep that. Now we're just drawn to the center of the overall image. Let's give it some feather and then keep them highlights. So this is obviously back into the global adjustments. As I was saying earlier, we can really bring out some more details just by playing with the contrast here, just seeing how it looks. I think I'm quite happy with the way it is there, to be honest. I might just lower that a bit more. I'll come down to my calibration here. You've probably seen this a ton. So this really enhances your colors in your image, and I'm just going to boost up the blues. If you have a look over here, just have a look at this mountain top here. As I boost them up, it really emphasizes that sun glow. Come back out, and that is pretty much this, as you're seeing here, is how it was looking on the day. That's what caught my eye. It looked absolutely stunning. I think it's a bit too much blue, so I'm going to come up again into the color mixer, and I'm going to reduce that blue again. You just got to be careful that you're not getting rid of the blue, that nice cool feeling down here that you've put on that adjustment on your mask. Obviously we want to try and keep the temperature for that quite blue, but overall, I think that's I think that is it. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. So there you go, guys. That's it for this image. The image looks balanced. It's I think it's completed. I'm sure I could probably go into Photoshop and then remove these pylons and stuff, but I think if anything, it adds to the photo. I think what I can do is there's a nice section around here that I can brush in. So around in this section, just zoom in on here. Just want to bring some of this out, make that really pop. Again, I don't want to do too much. I don't want to go overboard with it. But I really want to bring this out. So I'm going to brighten that up slightly. Not too much. Give it some more colour. Get some. Definitely want to get some contrast in that as well. Bring up the highlights in there. Bring up some of that shadow. Brighten it up. Just raise that. It really makes it pop. I might just get another one in there as well. I might just brushing over here just to make it match a little bit more. Contrast in there. Drop down the highlights. Some of that shadows. Let's have a look. See, that's really made that pop. So without them, it looks dull. Add that to the image. Just makes that part of the image pop a bit more. You know, there's more going on. Yeah, I think that looks quite nice, and I'll be quite happy as a to create a print in that. To be honest, I think that looks quite nice. So yeah, if you like this video, guys, if there's anything that you would have done differently, or any hints, or even give me some tips in regards to my processing. Obviously, I'm not the greatest at processing, but do things on the fly. But yeah, if you found the video useful or anything like that, then please do give us a thumbs up, a like, and a subscribe. And yeah, I'm sure there'll be more videos to come in the near future. So thank you ever so much for watching. And until next time, bye.